Welcome back to the deep dive. You brought us just a fascinating stack of research today, all about the neurology of motivation. And I think this is the deep dive, frankly, that everyone needs right now.
It really is.
I mean, if you're struggling with putting the phone down, ignoring those alerts, and actually getting to the hard stuff,
Yeah.
you are definitely not alone.
It's the defining struggle of our age, I think, and it cuts right to this core paradox of human behavior. We know intellectually what we should be doing.
Studying, exercising, the project at work.
Exactly. But our brains are constantly, hijacking our intentions. They pull us toward the easy thing, the immediate gratification.
When we try to fight it, we use willpower to stop playing the game, but then the brain just whispers, oh, just one more minute of scrolling.
And that's why willpower fails so often. The part of your brain that's generating that want, that powerful motivational pull, that's the part that's already controlling the steering wheel. There's this old kind of dark humor analogy for this. It's like, you do not control the dopamine controls you.
So we can't just choose to want less of the fun stuff. That's an impossible loop to be in.
It is. So we have to identify the target. The central motivational headquarters is a small structure deep in the brain called the nucleus accumbens.
The NOAC.
The NOAC, yeah. And the innate is our drive generator. It uses dopamine as its main signal. So when an activity releases dopamine, the innate logs that as pleasurable, and this is the critical part, it makes sure that activity is behaviorally reinforced.
You do the thing, you feel good, you want to do the thing again.
The loop.
So we can't just talk to the NAIC and ask it to please prioritize my taxes over a video game.
Precisely. Because the NAIC is the driver of that want. It wouldn't even know how to listen. So our mission today, based on these sources, it can't be to change the NAIC directly.
Okay.
The mission is to use the inputs from other brain circuits for emotion, memory, value, to weaken the NAIC's grip on our behavior.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're essentially building a neurological toolkit. We're going to modulate the system from the outside in. We'll look at, 5 key circuits and some practical methods?
5 circuits, 5 methods.
Great. Let's start with what might be the most counterintuitive idea for a lot of people. This whole myth of the dopamine detox.
It's fascinating because the popular idea is, starve yourself of all pleasure.
Right.
But that's just misguided. We actually want a large amount of dopamine available in our brains.
You want more dopamine.
You do. Because dopamine isn't just pleasure. It is the primary fuel for motivation and for sustained effort. It's essential for reinforcing good behaviors.
So the goal isn't less dopamine. It's regulating when and how we spend it. This is where that bank account analogy you mentioned really helps.
Exactly. Think of your available dopamine like a daily reserve in a bank account.
When you wake up, it's full.
It should be full, yes.
Yeah.
Then you do some low dopamine things. Cleaning your desk, starting that first difficult paragraph of an email, a brisk walk, a little bit of dopamine gets released. It reinforces that productive action, but because it's a small withdrawal, you still have plenty left in the bank for the rest of the day.
The problem then is when you try to squeeze all the juice from the lemon first thing.
Right. Once that reserve is low, you need something really potent, a video game, a super sensational social media feed,
Sugary snacks.
high sugar snacks,
Yeah.
just to wring out those last few drops of motivational fuel. And that powerful squeeze, it just depletes your account. And then there's nothing left for the hard work later on.
And this is exactly what the research shows. Tell us about those rat studies, the ones that highlight this depletion effect.
Yeah, these studies really show the cost. So researchers compared control rats with rats that had their dopamine pathways artificially depleted. The control rats with full motivation circuits, they did a lot of work. They pressed levers for rewards over and over.
And the depleted rats.
They engaged in dramatically less action. And it's not just, general laziness. The key finding was that dopamine is critical for overcoming behavioral constraints.
Work-rated response costs, I think they called it.
That's it. It's the mental toll of sustained effort. So think of it this way. A rat gets a choice. Really delicious, high-value chow that it has to climb a little wall to get.
Okay.
Or boring, low-value lab chow that's just sitting right there, easy to access.
I think I know where this is going.
A dopamine-intact mouse, it'll climb the wall, it'll put in the work for the better food, but the dopamine-depleted rat, it's too lazy. It just takes the easy, crappy food, even though it knows the other stuff is better.
That is a perfect perfect analogy for procrastination. We know this successful project, the clean house, the good grade is there,
Yeah.
but we're too depleted to climb the wall. So we just settle for the Netflix binge.
The depletion removes the fuel. It stops you from translating what you know is good for you into actually doing what's good for you.
So our first actionable method, let's call it the dopamine reserve strategy. It's all about conservation. The biggest mistake is a high DA activity early in the day.
Yes. That's the powerful squeeze that just ruins the rest of your day. You have to do the productive, low dopamine stuff first. We strongly recommend avoiding that kind of instant gratification technology for at least an hour after waking.
An hour minimum, but ideally.
Ideally 4 hours. Use that high morning reserve to tackle your hardest, most boring task. Reinforce the difficult behaviors when your tank is actually full.
Okay, but let me push back on that a little. For a lot of people listening, their job is technology. The first thing they do is check email, which is inherently, high dopamine.
That is a crucial distinction. We're not saying avoid technology, we're saying avoid unregulated technological consumption.
So what does that look like?
If you have to check email, just check email. Don't open the social media tab. Don't open the news feed. If your job is coding, open your coding program and nothing else. The goal is to make that first hour task-oriented and defined.
Not just passively receiving whatever the internet throws at you.
Exactly. You're spending your dopamine reserve deliberately, not accidentally.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving from the supply of dopamine to the circuits that make us vulnerable. Let's talk about the emotional landscape.
Right. To see the bigger picture, we have to bring in the amygdala. The amygdala is our emotion and threat center. Fear, stress, anxiety. That's its domain.
And it has a huge influence over the MDAC.
Massive. It basically determines your vulnerability to instant gratification. The more negative emotion you're dealing with, anxiety, depression, just general stress, the more vulnerable you become.
Why is that?
Because when the amygdala is fired up, when you feel bad, your brain knows one really fast way to shut that feeling off.
Dopamine.
A big release of dopamine. High DA activities are like a powerful, immediate painkiller for stress. And that creates this intense craving. The negative emotion itself triggers a desperate search for pleasure to counteract the pain.
Which sounds like the very core of addictive behavior. Using an external pleasure to manage an internal pain.
It is. People who struggle with any kind of addiction, whether it's technology or a substance, often have a really high baseline of negative, unprocessed emotions. And as long as those are pent up, their vulnerability to that siren call of dopamine is just amplified.
So to weaken the NAVLAC, we have to quiet down the amygdala.
You have to reduce its baseline activity.
Which brings us to method number 2, the emotional processing strategy. And this isn't just about, doing good things. It's about controlling that vulnerability input.
You have to deal with those negative emotions actively. And one simple, surprisingly powerful strategy from the sources is taking a non-technological walk.
No phone, no podcast, just walking.
Just walking for about an hour. The rhythmic movement, the change of scenery, the time away from a screen, it allows the amygdala's activity to naturally slow down. A lot of that emotion just processes automatically without you even trying.
I really appreciate how concrete that is.
Yeah.
The data we looked at showed that just 3 one-hour walks a week can significantly increase your resistance to cravings.
It's a huge return on a very simple investment. You're tackling the cause of the craving, not just trying to suppress the craving itself.
Okay, let's move up to the front of the brain. The third influential circuit, the prefrontal cortex, the PFC.
Right. We usually think of the PFC as being all about willpower, but its role in motivation is a bit more subtle and more critical. It performs a constant subconscious value assessment.
It's calculating what an action is worth at any given moment.
Exactly. So if you choose to watch a movie instead of prepping for a presentation, it's because a subconscious part of your brain calculated that the immediate value of the movie is greater right now.
It's not about what I know intellectually. I know the presentation is better for my career.
But that intellectual knowledge isn't what's driving the immediate behavior. It's that subconscious judgment. If the PFC judges that the immediate cost, the pain of working outweighs the delayed reward, you will procrastinate. Every time.
Okay, so that raises the big question. Why do we suddenly find motivation to work 20 hours straight the day before a huge deadline? We were completely unmotivated for weeks, and then boom.
That's the panic example. When that deadline is right there, the consequences, the pain of failing become huge and immediate, and the PFC's value judgment shifts dramatically.
The cost of not doing the work is suddenly much bigger than the pain of doing it.
And we can actually tap into that motivation earlier.
Which leads to our third method, the conscious value assessment strategy, forcing the brain to, as you put it, play the tape through to the end. How do we do that before the panic sets in?
The technique here is crucial. You have to slow the mind down. And that means getting away from high-speed technology. You sit down with a piece of paper and a pen.
Why pen and paper specifically?
Because writing by hand is slow. It forces the POC to fully engage and consider what you're writing. The process is to walk through the consequences of the two choices, hour by hour.
Okay, so if I game at 8 a.m., what am I actually doing at 10 a.m., and how will I really feel at 5 p.m. versus the alternative?
Precisely. If I start studying at 8 a.m., how will I feel at 5 p.m.? Because our internal voice always lies to us. It says, oh, we'll just start later.
I'll make up for it.
I'll make up for it. Playing the tape through forces you to confront what actually happens. And even if you still choose the distracting thing, the exercise is never wasted.
How so?
You've consciously and slowly introduced the long-term pain into the subconscious value assessment. The activity becomes less mindless, it creates a small mental shift, and over time, that changes the brain's default judgment.
A powerful way to kind of re-engineer your own neurology.
Yeah.
Let's shift now to the memory circuit, the hippocampus.
The hippocampus, which is essential for memory, also has a strong influence on the ANGMAC, and, crucially, it values novelty.
Novelty. New things.
Yes. It also acts as an early warning system against failure. So if you try to do something you failed at over and over again, like restarting the same old gym routine you quit last year.
Or opening the same boring textbook.
Right. The hippocampus discourages the motivational impulse. It basically says, hey, we've tried this. It was painful. We stopped. Let's do something we know feels good.
So this brings us to the fourth method, the novelty strategy. We have to trick the hippocampus into thinking the activity is new and therefore worth trying.
Exactly right. If you want to start exercising, don't go back to the same weights that failed. Try something completely new. Pilates, Tai Chi, join a new workout group. The more novel it is, the stronger that initial motivational impulse will be.
And the more robust the positive dopamine response.
Correct. And this applies to work, too. If you're stuck on a boring report, inject novelty. Change your location. Work from a cafe. Use a new productivity tool. Change how you do your research.
It's the same thing the gaming industry does, right? They're constantly adding new maps, new challenges.
New features, all to keep old repetitive actions feeling fresh and engaging. We just need to apply that same design strategy to our own productive lives.
Okay, finally, let's bring in the fifth circuit, one that's tightly linked to dopamine but often gets overlooked, the opioid system.
What's really fascinating here is how pain and pleasure are linked within this system. The opioid system, which mediates pain signals, it works hand in glove with the dopamine system.
How does that balance affect our motivation?
The pleasure we get from an activity actually increases as we increase the difficulty or the pain. Think about the massive rush you get from finally solving a hard coding problem.
Or winning a video game after a huge comeback where you almost lost.
The pain of the struggle amplifies the pleasure of the victory. And conversely, if we half-ass a workout just to avoid the pain, we minimize the pain, sure, but we also drastically minimize the behavioral reinforcement. The ENaC doesn't register it as very rewarding.
So if it's not hard, it's not worth it, neurologically speaking.
That's the core insight. If you don't engage with some moderate discomfort, the activity registers as low reward, and the ENaC won't prioritize doing it again.
So our fifth and final method is simple, but hard to execute. The moderate pain strategy. We shouldn't run from discomfort. We need to find a moderately painful activity that we know we can still complete.
Physical exertion is the perfect example. When you lift weights, the first, 6 reps are easy. It's that 7th or 8th rep, the deep burn, that registers as pain.
Right.
That intense, moderate pain is what positively reinforces the behavior. It's what gives you the strongest release of pleasure afterward. Now, if the pain is too high, the brain rejects it. But if it's the right amount of pain, it increases your resistance to future distractions.
Because you've proven to yourself that you can tolerate discomfort for a meaningful reward.
Exactly. It puts a whole new neurological frame around this idea of seeking discomfort. It's not just a moral virtue. It's the actual mechanism for strengthening your motivation circuits.
Okay, let's try to synthesize all of this, because the fundamental shift seems to be this. We can't choose what we want. We can't just command ourselves to desire something.
We can't create the wants that we want, no. So instead, we have to use these other brain circuits to strategically weaken the NERAC's control.
We do that through these 5 inputs. first?
First, protecting our dopamine reserves. Start the day with productive, low DA activities. Second, reducing negative emotions via the amygdala, maybe with those long walks, to lower our vulnerability to cravings.
Third, adjusting our value assessment through the PFC by consciously playing the tape through.
Fourth, introducing novelty through the hippocampus to make sure our efforts get a strong motivational kickstart.
And finally, embracing moderate pain through the opioid circuit to make sure that the effortful activity registers as highly pleasurable and worth repeating.
The essential takeaway here is that control is always indirect. You can't force one part of your brain to comply. You have to influence it through the circuits that it listens to. We spent way too much time relying on this vague idea of willpower instead of looking at the precise neurological inputs that actually determine our motivation.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, it raises a really important question. If direct control is impossible without these inputs from the 5 circuits, what is one non-dopaminergic activity, a moderately painful one, a novel one, or an emotional processing one, that you can commit to starting tomorrow to begin controlling your nucleus accumbens rather than letting it control you?